It never fails.
Yeah,
It never
yeah.
fails.
Really?
Every video I've ever done, somehow we managed to time it right. And the guy, it's kind of like they call up, are they filming today? Good, we'll be down to blow the parking lot. Welcome to the Satori Lifestyle Podcast. I'm your host, Dave Kovar, and if you like this podcast, please like and share and subscribe to it. We'd love to have as many people possible to join in the conversation. I'm today with me is Shihan Nick Wilson. Hello, sir.
Hello, sir.
So, Mr. Wilson is my good friend. He's trained with me for almost 30 years and a team member, and we've done a lot of training together and hanging out. And thought today we would just talk about the Satori lifestyle and you know, kind of overcoming challenges. I know you've had a few lately, and just kind of what makes you get up in the morning and keep going in the right direction. So I thought I'd start by you and I are both we're both pretty focused on staying in shape, and that's a priority. And you and I talk a little bit about in martial arts training how someone that maybe stays fit versus someone that doesn't, the different effect it has on them.
So I think, and maybe you're the one that kind of gave me this analogy. It's kind of like tuning up your car, right? So if I'm running my car at 100 miles an hour, you know, every day, something's going to break down eventually. But if I'm, running my car at the speed limit and I'm getting it, tuned up and oil changes and spark plugs and all that kind of stuff, it's going to run a lot longer. So, thinking of your body as, a vessel of, hey, I want my body to work for a long time. I can't go 100 miles an hour. It's like Icarus, right? I can't fly that close to the sun. Otherwise I'm going to get burned. So, making sure that and we're going to probably touch on it today of what are the things I need to do to take care of my body so I can train or do the things that I love to do, whether it's martial arts or some other kind of activity for a long period of time.
Yeah, I've seen so many people from my generation of martial arts that used to train and aren't anymore. And hey, good people, hardworking, tough people, but what they did is they that car analogy, it's like, they didn't take the time to get it tuned up. Or let's imagine if you're a race car and, you want to be able to, you never know when you're going to have to make that race happen, right? Mm-hmm. So what are you going to do? You're not just going to leave it in the shop. You're going to get that car out on the track and you're going to keep it tuned up. And every now and then you're going to take a corner fast. Every now and then you might pass someone, but the rest of the time you're going to pace yourself. And if you ever need to, it's there for you. And a lot of the guys in my generation were just racing all the time, so to speak. And inevitably something's going to break. And the other thing that it's kind of like when you're, the paradigm that I had several years back is that I don't do martial arts to get in shape. I try to stay in shape so I can do martial arts, and kind of explain what does that mean to you, the difference between the two?
Well, this is something that we've talked about a lot recently is, keeping your body working, keeping it functioning. And there's so much that goes into that. There's a reason that professional athletes, NFL players, NBA players, they have a strength and conditioning program, right? There's a reason that they have that. It's because that's going to keep them from getting injured, right? Mm-hmm. There's a reason that they have a professional, physical therapist on staff and someone that goes around and makes sure that they're, taking an ice bath and all that kind of stuff, the recovery and the stretching, because they can't just go out and play basketball, right? So with us, what are the things that we need to do outside of just training martial arts to keep our bodies functioning at a high level?
Yeah, so it's kind of like imagine you're going to go to battle and you have armor on versus not having armor on, right? Mm-hmm. And so you might go to battle and just be such a talented swordsman, that you beat 5 guys that have armor on. But bottom line is armor is going to keep you protected, right? And mm-hmm. kind of like being fit helps that happen, right? It keeps the body mm-hmm. flexible and tight and willing to endure. And as a matter of fact, you had an interesting thing happen a couple of weeks ago, and I think your level of fitness really made an incredibly big difference, and the reason why you and I are able to talk here right now. So share with everybody what happened a couple of weeks back.
So yeah, about a week and a half ago, I got rear-ended. I was coming to a stop. I got hit probably going 50 miles an hour and got pushed into a truck in front of me and hit my head on the steering wheel, broke my nose, my back hurts. And I got a really tiny car, by the way. It's a Toyota Yaris, so it's not the biggest car. I had a car, so it's totaled now, right?
Sorry, I didn't want to rub it in there. I didn't want to rub it in.
No, I had a car, exactly. So, but I was thinking about that, on my way home is, that I usually grapple 4 or 5 days a week, and I'm not going 100% each time, but the amount of core strength it takes in your back, in your hips, in your neck, in your shoulders to kind of grapple.
Yeah.
And I really feel like that helped me
100%
getting in the car crash. Like I would have been a lot more hurt if my core and my neck had been, if I just had a desk job and I didn't do any exercise at all.
Right,
basically.
totally. And you also broke the steering wheel with your face, right?
I bent the steering wheel.
Bent the steering wheel. That's even worse. Yeah. Well, so the bottom line is this: we don't know what would have happened if you were more sedentary. But the bottom line is, there's no doubt in my mind that the reason we were able to walk out of it was because your fitness level certainly helped a lot. Yeah, no doubt.
Absolutely.
And so I guess the bottom line is, the way I've always looked at it is, or I should say always, in my later years. That sounds wrong. In my later years, in my mid years, how's that? Is that health, fitness, martial arts? That's the order, right? And I want to stay healthy over being fit. And what's the difference? There's a massive difference. If you look at, like a bodybuilder about ready to go into competition, they're really fit, but they're not necessarily healthy. Or a fighter, how many times has a fighter gone into the ring and they're not even healthy, right? They've cut them, they've done this extreme, weight cuts, and they've got, a 3 bruised ribs, or broken ribs.
Sure.
And so health first, then fitness, and that's going to allow us longevity in martial arts training. So why do you think that because people know this is not rocket science. So why do you think it's so hard for so many people to make health and fitness a priority?
Well, I think it's kind of like, for us, like martial arts is like our candy. Like that's the fun stuff, right? And I usually run 3 days a week, but I don't really like to run.
Right.
It's not my favorite thing to do. Will I do push-ups? Sure. Are they my favorite thing to do? Not really.
But
right?
they're fun being done.
It's fun being done. It's fun being done. And so if I was to choose between running 3 miles and doing 100 push-ups, or grappling for an hour, I'd probably put grappling for an hour because it's a little bit more fun. But those are the things that I need to do. So I think bottom line, it goes back to like, eating your vegetables and brushing your teeth. It's like things that you don't really want to do, but that they're good for you. And I think, for strength and conditioning, when you look at professional athletes, they have a staff that's around them, that's coaching them, that's telling them to do those types of things. So I kind of try to think of, okay, if I was a professional athlete and I had a full staff, what would my coaches be telling me to do?
And can you do that anyway, right?
And can I do that anyway without anybody telling me to do it?
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about that forever, right? What I always look at is that a couple different things is, what would my future self thank me for doing today? Right? Because where you are today is based on your habits that you had yesterday and the day before, right? And so I look at it like this: there's what I should do, and what I want to do, and what I am doing. And sometimes those line up. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes you're doing what you should do, what you want to do, what you are doing. But a lot of times you're faced with a choice. This is what I should do. This is what I want to do. Well, guess what? Make sure you do. The rule is, what should you do, and then follow through. That's not always easy, but you never look back. It's kind of like when you never look back after a productive day and think, wow, I wished I wouldn't have exercised today, or wow, I wished I wouldn't have done my meditation, or I wish I'd have eaten more crap this morning. You never think that. You never regret that second piece of cake you didn't eat.
Sure. Well, you and I are big fans of, Benny the Jet, right? And we've gone down and we've got an opportunity to train with him several times. Would you, maybe for our viewers, could you kind of explain who he is?
Sensei Benny the Jet, or Kitas, is, considered by many people the greatest kickboxer that ever lived. And arguably, it's absolutely true. I think he has like a undefeated record, like over 60 fights. He was, really proficient in karate tournaments in the early 70s, or late 60s, early 70s, and then went on to become the WK world champion for like 20 years. And just a really amazing guy. And I think he's in his mid 70s now, and he still moves incredibly well, as you've seen. And he's got this approach to training that he trains very intense, but he really respects his body, and he is all about longevity. And so, there's so many lessons. It's interesting that you bring his name up, because he's not just physically like good. He's all this really deep guy, which is always cool when you got a guy that's like Sensei Benny, who's also super just kind of deep. And he's the kind of guy, I mean, you've had conversations with him where you can he can read right through you, kind of, sort of. You look at him and you can't he'll figure out right away. And some of the stuff that he'll do is, like, for example, if you ever go out to dinner with him or lunch, and I think you've eaten with him before, is that if he's eating and he's in your presence, that means you're an okay guy. Because what he won't do, if he ends up being somewhere where he doesn't like the people he's with, he won't eat, because he doesn't feel like he wants to ingest that negative energy. It's just just a little kind of a quirky thing.
Well, I'm glad he ate in front of me then.
Yes, and one of the things, I have a good friend. His name is Farbors. Of course, Farbors is Jacques, runs an incredibly successful school down in Woodland Hills, California, and that's where Sensei Benny teaches. And Sensei Farbors, I hope I get this story right, but a story about Sensei Benny. Farbors wants Sensei Benny to teach at his school because he's not teaching anywhere, and so Farbors starts talking about how hard it is to run a martial arts school, and so Sensei Benny says, "Here's the deal, man. I'll consider working for you. I'll consider coming and teaching at your place, but this is what you got to do. Every day when you show up to the school, you got to put the key in the door, and before you open the door, you got to think about how lucky you are to be able to teach martial arts for a living and how good your life is. And then once you come inside, the first thing you got to do is you got to wander through the building and remember all the great times and things that have happened in the school. And if you can do that for a couple weeks, get back to me, and I'll consider teaching." And of course, Farbors calls me and tells me that he's been doing this. It's changed his life. And ever since then, I don't do it every day, but right now we're in our headquarters school. Most days when I come in, first thing I do is I wander through the building and I just kind of look around and I try to remember all the amazing memories and how lucky I am to do what I love for a living. And all of a sudden, the day's challenges aren't that big of a deal.
Yeah. Right. It's funny you say that about Sensei Benny, because I think the first time you introduced him to me, he came up to me and he looked me in the eye and he said, "Sometimes do you fear yourself?" And it was like he was looking into my soul, and I just said, "Yes." The back of the hair on the back of my neck stood up. But one of the things that he talked about, one of the last times, I think the couple times that we went down there to see him, is he talked about what we're practicing is warfare, and physical warfare, but also mental warfare and emotional warfare, and how important those things are to our training as a martial artist. And this is something that I feel like I've learned a lot from you over the years, is strategies to try to figure that out. You're those times that you're not at your best mentally or emotionally. So is there anything that you wanted to share about that?
I think we might just put this on hold for a second.
Let's pause real quick.
Yeah, we'll go back a little bit.
We were doing really good when they were
trimming
across and trimming. That actually couldn't hear that at all.
And it usually was Wednesdays. This is Thursday, isn't it? He'll be done in a minute. It never fails. It never fails.
Really?
Every video I've ever done, somehow we managed to time it right. And the guy, it's kind of like they call up, "Are they filming today?" Good, we'll be down to blow the parking lot.
All right. We can keep it rolling. We're good.
Okay, cool.
So one of the things that Benny, Sensei Benny, talked about last time I went down there is how martial arts, you're practicing warfare. And he talked about physical warfare. Yes, that's like, the kicking and the punching and the stuff we're all used to, but also mental warfare and emotional warfare. And I know this is something that you've really coached all of us on, is all the different strategies to try to, be at your best mentally, emotionally. And just to hear that from a different perspective, I thought was really interesting.
Yeah. So it's really it's one thing to to read something, but when you're around someone like him, where he's really deep and he walks his talk, it's really powerful. And you teach what you most need to hear. And all the stuff that I'm constantly talking about, I'm really saying it for my own benefit more than others, more than anything else. Well, I thought we'd switch gears a little bit because you're a very efficient guy, and we'll talk about time management. I'm going to start by just saying a few general things about this. And these principles are universal; they work for anybody, regardless of their personal, professional. I always look at two things, right? The difference between being effective and being efficient. Okay, being efficient is doing things right, and being effective is doing the right thing. So you can be very efficient with something that's a waste of your time. It's kind of like you're majoring in a minor activity, right? But so I always look at, okay, how can I be most effective with my time? And that's kind of the what I'm going to do, and then efficient is how I'm going to do it, right? And so those are kind of a guidelines that like. And by the way, being effective, that doesn't mean you always have to be productive. There's a time for downtime. There's a time to read a novel or watch Netflix. There's nothing wrong with that, as long as you're on your real schedule. As long as you're doing what you should do, and sometimes that recharge is important. And then I look at it like, you got all these projects. I kind of break it down into what I must do, what I should do, and what would be nice to do, right? And so you got a bunch of stuff on your list. The first thing you do is often what we tend to do is we tend to do the easiest thing first or the funnest thing first. It's like, but what's most important, right? And then oftentimes once you do that, you get that out of the way. It just makes everything else easier. But I know you've done a lot. You're a very self-read guy. You've done a lot of work in this area. What are your comments on being? Because you're a busy guy. You got a career, you got a family, you got your training. What are some of your keys to fitting it all in?
Well, I think for me, and I probably got this from you. I think the very first thing I like to do is begin with the end in mind. It's a Stephen Covey principle. It's what are my goals? What is it at the end of the year, at the end of 6 months and 5 years? What do I want to accomplish in different areas of my life? Tony Robbins talks about the wheel of life, right? And so I've got my physical health, I've got my mental health, I've got my career, my finances, all these different elements, relationships. And if I was to rate myself from 1 to 10 on these different areas, where would I rate myself? And you're never going to be a 10 in all the areas all at the same time. And so it's just trying to figure out what are my goals, and then kind of reverse engineering from there. Okay, if this is my goal, what are the actions I have to take to get there, right? And kind of baby step in the process. And as there are usually things that you got to do on a daily basis, right? A weekly basis to kind of work towards some of those longer term goals. And for me, I have to think about the things that I'm doing constantly on a daily basis, on a weekly basis and I like to use the Stephen Covey's 4 quadrants of time management. Okay. So I know you know this, but to recap, quadrant 1 are things that are urgent and important. So, if I'm running a martial arts school and I happen to get an angry parent that walked in the door or an angry phone call, it doesn't happen that often, luckily, but that's something I can't push off, right? I got to take care of it right now, and it's not going to go away. Okay. So things that are kind of like, the fires that you got to put out on a daily basis. And then you got things that are important, but not necessarily urgent. So for us, one of the things that we're constantly talking about is revamping our curriculum, right? Redoing, certain aspects of it, or redoing our instructor training program, or things that are a little bit more longer term project. Not necessarily something that's going to it's not going to happen overnight, but it is important. And if we don't do those things, it's going to turn into a quadrant 1.
Right.
It's going to turn into a fire. If anyway, I plan something 3 months from now. If I don't plan it, it's going to be next week, and I'm going to be scrambling.
So the bottom line is we want to try to live in quadrant 2 if we can. It's funny. I don't know about you, but I've lived in quadrant 1 so much of my life. It's like quadrant 2 feels like I should be doing something more urgent, right? Okay, so we have quadrant 1, urgent, important. Quadrant 2, urgent, not important. Take us through the other 2.
So third one is things that are urgent but not important. So we're both sitting here with our cell phones right in front of us.
At least we haven't turned down. No, I don't. Never mind. But the ringers are off.
But you get a little notification, right? And what does it do? It distracts.
Hold on, I got a notification. Let me check what's
It distracts you. It makes you want to look down and look at that, or you've got that, spam call, or you've got things that kind of take you away that really aren't that important, but they're urgent. They kind of take you away. So I think as much as we can do to eliminate those things, or if you have other people on your team, you can delegate those things off to kind of free you up to do a little bit more, important tasks. And then the last thing is things that are not urgent and not important. So that's kind of like, I'm watching Netflix, right? I'm playing Candy Crush on my phone, something like that. And like you said, sometimes we need to have that time. It's decompression time, right? But that's not where we're spending the majority of our time.
Very good. Good summary. And, one of the things that's interesting is like, you go through different things speak to you at different times in your life. And I know that I've always, been someone that set goals and, I can't tell how many times I've written out my 1 year goal, my 5-year goal, and my 10-year goal. And I think those are all really important. Of course, where I've been leaning more lately is the old take care of the days and the years take care of themselves. And I recently read a book, The Lion Tracker's Guide to Living by a guy named Boyd Vardy, and it's really interesting. And I believe, and I might have the name wrong, but so the story is Boyd Vardy's a 4th generation lion tracker and safari guide in South Africa. His great grandfather bought a big chunk of land and started a safari business 100 years ago. And at the time they would track and then kill the lion. Right now, over the years, he's revitalized the land, and now it's tracking lions, and they take pictures, and it's very eco-friendly. And so it's really, by the way, it's a great book. But in one of the, I believe his guide, the gentleman that taught him to guide when he was a kid was Sully, I want to say his name was. And one time when Boyd's a little kid, he goes, "So Sully, where are you going to go to find the lion?" And so he looks at him and he goes, "I don't know where I'm going, but I know how I'm going to get there." And so he goes, "What do you mean?" Well, first off, if you think the lion is going to be in this exact spot, you're going to be wrong, 99 out of 100 times. So what I do is I wait for the lion to roar, and then I go to where I think I heard the lion roar, and then I look for tracks. And when I find a track, I see which way they're going, and then I'm in the present, I'm alert and aware, and eventually I'll find the lion. And I think it's a great metaphor for living.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know, who knows where your health is going to be, your business, your relationships. But if today, you know what I'm saying? You eat right, exercise, educate yourself, work hard, be kind, you be proactive with your relationships. Then guess what? You can put together a few days like that, and you've made a lot of progress. And so it's kind of almost I think it's great to have goals, but you can't be locked on to something.
Sure.
Like I love growing tomatoes, and I've got a bunch of tomatoes, just starting to get a bunch of tomatoes right now. For the next few months, I've got all the tomatoes I can eat, right? But earlier on, when they were sprouting, and you've done it too, you're a gardener as well. You can't plant a tomato seed and every 3 days pull it out the roots to see if it's growing or not. What you're going to do is you're going to plant the seed. You're going to make sure it gets water. You're going to make sure you put it in the sun. You make sure that you fertilize the soil. You keep the weeds away, and then you let nature take its course.
Sure.
And I think that's a certain amount of what we've got to do too. You have some long-term goals, and then you just every friggin' day try to move forward.
Absolutely. And as you're saying that, it's kind of like the next action, like you said, okay, I got to this point. What's the next action I got to take? What's the next action I got to take? And, another great productivity, time efficient system is Getting Things Done by David Allen. And I'm a big proponent of that too. And that's basically what he says in his Getting Things Done is, okay, what is the next action I have to do for this big project I'm working on? Okay, I got to call Jim, right?
Yeah.
And then I got to send Susie the email. And then it kind of, sometimes it feels like I'm not getting any work done, but you are. It's just slower, right? It's just that next step.
But what's interesting is like, the story goes, and I'm probably messing this story up, but Andrew Carnegie, was it Andrew Carnegie? Anyway, I believe it was that had the big steal. Was it Andrew Carnegie that had the big steal with the Monopoly 100 years ago? Yeah, it's a Carnegie, but it's not Andrew Carnegie. Andrew Carnegie wrote How to Win Friends and Influence People.
That was Dale.
Dale Carnegie. Then it is Andrew Carnegie. Andrew Carnegie, steal.
Yep.
Okay, good enough. I got the story then. Well, another great way to look at time management, you talk about the next thing, to do the next thing, right? And sometimes it doesn't feel like enough, is that the legend has it that Andrew Carnegie, the great steel mogul from 120 or 140 years ago, however long it was, he one time he wanted a time management, a productivity expert to come and give him some advice. So the guy came and analyzed his project and spent a couple days with him and said, all right, tell you what, this is what I want you to do. Make a list of all the things that are most important for you to do, okay? And do as much, and write them in order of importance from 1 to 10. And start your day by doing number 1 and go as far as you can. Either finish it. If you can't finish, go as far as you absolutely can. And when you're done, go to 2 and go down the list. And then the next day, do another list and do the same thing. And so Andrew Carnegie goes, all right, man, what do I owe you? He goes, I'll tell you what. The time management expert says, don't pay me anything. Just promise to do this for a month, and at the end of a month, you tell me what it was worth. Okay. So Andrew Carnegie does this system, and the guy comes back a month later and says, "You changed my business. This is friggin' incredible," and writes a check for like $20,000, and that's when that would be comparable to $500,000 now or something, because that method looks so effective. Well, it works so effectively. And what's interesting is a lot of times you think, well, man, there's a lot of stuff I'm not getting done. If you're busting your butt on most important things, your other way you wouldn't have got it done. You know what I'm saying? So it's like and by the way, I'd like to say I follow this system 100% of the time.
Sure.
But if I told you that, I'd be lying. This is an area for me that as I say this, like, there's about 5 things that popped into my head that I got to do. The next thing that I should be doing right now.
Well, I think what you're talking about is just that prioritization. Because it seems like, the busier you get, you just have more and more stuff you got to get done. And there's no way you could do it all in one day or even 1 week. And so I find myself constantly, at least on a weekly basis, if not monthly basis, I got to get everything that's in my brain out on a piece of paper, because they're rattling around in my brain of, I got to get this, and okay, stop, get it all out on paper, and then go through that prior. What's the most important thing? Exactly like you said.
Yeah. So another aspect of kind of the Satori lifestyle is our ability to deal with stress, right? And stress isn't necessarily good or bad. It just is, and everybody has it. It's there's so many things that we can do to either magnify it or minimize it. And usually when I magnify the stress, guess who caused that stress? It's me. It's my perception on how I'm looking at things, right? And one of the things that I've really been focusing on, like for example, I just got back from the Martial Arts Super Show late last night, and the flight was delayed by 45 minutes. Then we ended up on the tarmac for an extra hour, and it's nothing big deal. Now, if I didn't watch it, I could let that stuff get to me, right? But I honestly, that really doesn't bother me much anymore, because I look at that as my chance to practice not reacting to the situation. And it's something that I don't always get it right, but when I'm conscious of it, I'm not as affected by the negativity of those around me. Any thoughts on this process or how you might have applied this?
Oh man, so much. I mean, over the years, you've taught me a lot of this stuff, but I feel, something really simple I got from my uncle a few years ago was HALT. And that's basically stop and take a breath anytime you're hungry, angry, lonely, or tired.
Love it.
Or a combination of one of 2 or 3 of those all at the same time, right? And so, I know for me, it's a lot of times like I'm just hungry, I'm just angry, or I'm just tired. I need to stop and take a minute and just decompress for a second. I think, it all comes down to good habits, right? When we're eating right, when we're getting enough sleep, when we're exercising, we're always at our best. It's when, we didn't get enough sleep and we didn't get that exercise, or we didn't eat right.
But I think the HALT that you just said, hungry, angry, lonely, tired is a nice formula for it, because you're not always going to get enough sleep. That's the whole point. You're going to miss meals. There's going to be stuff that comes up. And so having a tool that helps you when that comes up, it's going to come up, man. I think that's really powerful. I'm gonna. That's a keeper. Yeah. And the other thing along this lines, and it seems so obvious, but it's better to have friends than enemies. You know what I'm saying? And it's so easy to. If you don't watch it, let your moods affect others in a negative fashion. And I know some of the things that I'm trying to do a better job with is if I'm in not everybody, because some people aren't receptive, but if I'm in an elevator at a hotel and someone comes in, just to say, hey, how you doing? Or, hey, I like your shoes, or, that kind of thing that just, I don't know if they feel better, but I feel better when I do it, and what can I do? One of our mastery mindsets is I make others feel important when I'm in their presence. And I think in the bigger scheme of things, it just helps you come full circle.
Yeah. I mean, there's no downside in being kind, right? When you're kind to someone else, it boosts how they feel, it boosts how you feel. It's just, it's definitely a game changer. I know for me, trying to navigate, trying to, grow as a person, with my emotional intelligence, we hear that term a lot, emotional intelligence. I think anytime I've had a strong negative emotion, I think when I was younger, I would feel bad for feeling bad, if that makes sense.
Right, sure.
Like I'm not allowed to be angry, or I'm not allowed to be, whatever. And what I've come to learn just a lot from reading is we all have emotions, right? And the first thing is just to not just basically let it happen, right? The more I try to repel that emotion and pretend like it's not there, it's basically going to make it worse. And then I'm going to identify it. Okay, what emotion am I actually feeling? And, it's funny. I just took my son out to lunch, and this morning he was kind of grumpy. And I asked him, "How you doing?" And he just said, I woke up in a grumpy mood. I just feel bad. And I'm trying to dig into, okay, what does that mean? And he's still not at the age yet where he really knows what he's feeling. He just feels bad. And so the more I can identify, okay, am I tired? Am I hungry? Am I irritated? And then it's, okay, what triggered that? Right. And analyzing that. And then, okay, I know it's not going to be permanent, and it's going to go away eventually.
And then keeping yourself, you're going to feel anger, and you can't bottle it in, but keeping yourself from doing stupid stuff when you're angry, that kind of has to do with the halt that you talked about. It's like, all right, man, the old phrase, who's a mighty person? One who has control of their emotions is going to make friends with their enemies.
So you probably remember the name of the Buddhist monk, Nick.
Thich Nhat Hanh.
That's the one. So he wrote a book in anger, and in that book he said something I thought was really profound, which is, give the analogy of a burning house, right? And so if I'm sitting in my house and the house and there's arsonists, and they come by and they catch my house on fire, if I run after that arsonist, what happens to my house? My house burns down. Right. But if I stay back and I put out the fire, the arsonist is going to get away, but I'm going to put out the fire to my house. And so he kind of gave that analogy with anger is if someone says something to you or does something to you and it makes you angry, if I go after that person, I try to be angry at that person, that's basically me burning my own house. Yeah. Right. And what you're saying is, I need to stop and take a minute to decompress and breathe and sit with that. And that's me taking care of my house and putting out that fire.
Good stuff. Yeah. Well, I appreciate our time, man. Always fun, hanging with you and talking with you. And
sure.
Any closing thoughts before we wrap this up?
I think, this is a great podcast, and I just, appreciate you. And, with being a martial artist, it's, we try to live that martial arts lifestyle where it's not just about fighting, right? We love kicking and punching and sparring and grappling and all that kind of stuff. But hopefully at the end of the day, we're also trying to become better people, and we're trying to pass that on to our students. So
absolutely, man.
Thanks for being a great example of that.
Thank you, sir. No, it's like, it's a good life. It's not easy, but it's a good life. And, it's always important to try to anyway, aspire to be the person we know we can be. It's not always easy.
Sure.
Thanks for tuning in, guys. And if you enjoy the podcast, please like and share and subscribe, and see you next time. Bye-bye.